Your baby waking up more often right now does not mean you failed. It does not mean you have broken their sleep. It means your baby is developing. Welcome to the Baby Sleep Connection, a podcast that explores baby sleep and more through the lens of attachment and development. I'm your host, Heather Boyd. I'm a mom of 3, an occupational therapist, and a certified infant and family sleep specialist. If you are a tired parent who wants to support your baby's sleep holistically, keep listening as we delve into approaches that go well beyond the usual strategies of wake windows and bedtime routines. Your baby's sleep is connected with so much more. Hello, and welcome back to the Baby Sleep Connection podcast. I am giggling a little bit over here because right after I pressed record, my mic fell off the desk and landed right in my lap and against my chest with a big bump that happens when you tap a microphone. And I'm chuckling because my teenager has been asking me for a desk mount for this microphone. He uses it for video gaming, and I've thought about getting one for the podcast that he can also use, and I haven't. So I'm going to take this as a sign that maybe I should be looking into getting a desk-mounted, not so fancy as having an overhead-mounted mic, but a desk-mounted mic might be time. It might also be time, if you have a 3 or 4 month old, for a good discussion on the 4-month sleep regression. How's that for a segue? So the topic today is diving into one of the most talked about and feared phrases in baby sleep, the 4-month sleep regression. But I'm going to back up again a bit first in case this is your first time listening to the Baby Sleep Connection podcast. My role is to reduce the overwhelm about your baby's sleep and to bring you clarity and calm and confidence when it comes to supporting sleep without sleep training. So let's dive in. I want to challenge, first and foremost, the use of the word regression when we're talking about the 4-month sleep regression. What if we reframed it, and I know some of you have heard of this, not as a regression, but as a developmental progression? Because what's happening in your baby's brain at this stage of their development isn't a backslide. It's a leap forward. So let's take a deep breath if you are going through this, or probably even more importantly, because when we're in the depths of it, we're just like head down, get through. If you are afraid of this stage of development, it's creating a lot of anxiety for you, then let's take that deep breath and break this down. This isn't about making sleep as good at 4 months as it was at 3, if it ever was good at 3. It's about understanding development, so you understand why it looks the way that it does. It's tuning into your baby, and in doing so, you're letting go of the things that you don't have control over, and you're finding joy in this season, even with the sleep deprivation. It may not be butterflies and rainbows and unicorns, but the kind of joy that comes from that quiet confidence that you've got it, you understand what's happening, and you can let your baby go through this developmental stage. It's really about letting go of most of what you are trying to control about your baby's sleep. So let's dive in. So what is the 4-month sleep regression really? Well, let's start with the basics. The 4-month sleep regression is a term that you are probably aware of, gets tossed around a lot. There are blogs, parenting groups, threads on Facebook. Maybe even your own pediatrician has talked about it. But what's actually happening around this 3 to 5 month mark that causes such a big shift in sleep? Well, even that's debatable. If we look at the evidence, the research evidence, we can't really get a handle on whether this is actually a thing. However, we all know that because of the dynamic nature of sleep development and infant development in general in the first 3 years, there are going to be these tough spots and these easier spots where we're coasting. So let's start with the assumption that what many of us feel and experience from our baby sleep at the 4-month age is a thing. Here's the truth about it, though. It is not a regression in the sense that your baby is losing skills or going backwards. Instead, it's a permanent and necessary reorganization of how your baby sleeps. Permanent and necessary. Now, that does not mean the interruptions in their sleep is permanent, but this is a permanent reorganization at a neural level. And I'm going to bring up some examples here, parallel examples that hopefully highlight why I think we need to move past this regression talk. We don't say that you've regressed in your cooking skills if you're tired and get takeout. We don't say you've regressed if you get laryngitis and can't talk this week. We don't say you've regressed if you have no patience because you were up 10 times last night. We just know when those things happen that what is being asked of you is beyond what you're capable of in this moment. And later on, you'll demonstrate those skills again. You will cook. Well, and I'll be honest, I don't cook that often, so maybe that's not the best example. I have, however, had laryngitis. My voice came back. I've had days of no patience and other days where that patience is front and center, and I feel like I'm on top of the game. Let's extend that same grace that we have when things are not going well for us to our kiddos at this period in time. They are on this wild developmental sleep roller coaster in the first 3 years, and this point at the 3 to 5 month mark it can be a challenging one. We may not want to call it a regression, but it can be challenging because something is shifting developmentally. Before around 3 or 4 months, your newborn is spending a lot of time in active sleep. Like 50% of their time is in active sleep. It's light, it's twitchy. The sleep is marked by lots of sudden movements, little noises, and frequent waking. But they often are on autopilot sleep, which means even with this active sleep, there may be periods of time where you're not needing to do very much at all. Primarily it's feeding, but it's really autopilot sleep. They don't yet have mature sleep cycles like adults do. But around the time of like 3 or 4 months, your baby's sleep architecture, the way sleep is built, the way sleep is structured in the brain changes. They start to cycle between different stages of light sleep and deep sleep, more like what adults do. Now, they've still got a long way to go to get the sleep architecture that's going to look like an adult's sleep, but it's starting to shift. This is a sign that your baby's nervous system is developing, and rapidly. It's progress. It's healthy, and it can be disruptive because here's the thing, mature sleep is more interruptible. There's more to transition through. They're moving in and out of these phases. There's more opportunities for waking up. Now, we know newborns wake up often. A big driver of that is feeding and homeostasis regulation. We want babies to wake up often. It helps everything from feeding to heart rate and blood pressure and all those homeostatic pieces. As a 3 or 4 month old, your baby might go from sleeping pretty well. And I realize that's not always the case. I do work with many parents who quite assuredly say sleep has never really been easy. But many babies have gone through this autopilot, sleeping pretty well phase, and then suddenly they're waking up every 1 to 2 hours or more. And that can feel really confusing and frustrating. It can feel like you've done something wrong, but it's actually expected. So what's happening in the brain and body? Let's zoom in on what's happening developmentally here. Around 4 months, your baby's brain is undergoing major neurological development. And this, to me, is always absolutely amazing and incredible. And it's so valuable to know that this is happening so you can feel amazed that it's happening, even if it means a temporary interruption in sleep. The sleep-wake cycle, it begins to be aligned more closely with circadian rhythms. Yay, that means more sleep at night than during the day. That sometimes gets lost in the shuffle of this 4-month sleep regression. Parents are so afraid that it's going to happen that they miss that there's this shift towards nighttime sleep, which is a huge win, right? Babies are also integrating primitive reflexes. They're beginning to recognize cause and effect. They're developing new motor skills, like working towards rolling. They're making eye contact. They're tracking. All of these things light up the brain. I always describe it as being like firecrackers. And when the brain is on, sleep can feel off. From a sleep science perspective, the idea of a regression isn't quite accurate. Researchers and pediatric sleep experts often refer to it more accurately as a transition or a progression. It's not a temporary phase that will end and return to how things were. We're not going back. And if I remind you that you're getting more sleep consolidated at nighttime, you don't really want to go back. It really is a reorganization of the brain and of sleep, and it's here to stay. But of course, their brain will continue to mature and develop into sleep that looks more and more like an adult sleep. So if your baby's suddenly waking up more often, taking shorter naps, or struggling with bedtime, it's not because you've done anything wrong. They're not doing anything wrong. It's because something is changing. So why is this change happening? Well, I'm going to borrow straight from Lindsay Hookway here. She's the author of The Holistic Sleep Coach. And she says, developmentally, babies at this age are really distractible. So not only do you have all this neurological change happening, but you're at a stage of awareness where the distractions are coming in. Sleep is not as interesting as looking at faces, listening to sounds, and all the other things that are going on around a baby. Lindsay also suggests babies are learning a lot of new movement skills. And we touched on that a little bit earlier. So think about how much the brain has to integrate all this new learning. We know from the sleep science that a lot of learning integration happens in sleep. So we might be learning the content of things, like actually moving our body, actually taking in and absorbing what's happening, but it's the manipulation of all that data. I always think about it as being like organizing all this new stuff happens in sleep, in their interruptible sleep. And yes, I've made up that word, interruptible sleep gets interrupted. We also have babies at this stage who are more social, no matter what time of day or night. And that social engagement is part of what makes this stage of development so amazing. And it makes it so difficult at like 2 a.m. when they are full of smiles or blowing raspberries. And last, babies don't need to sleep as much as they did before. So if you looked at a chart of how much sleep to expect from your baby, it's going to be really high as a newborn, like 18 hours a day. And then that gradually drops over a child's entire childhood, really. Teenagers have a little bump up in sleep need, but they're also staying up later. A whole bunch of things get out of whack again. Maybe we should call it the teenage regression. Who knows? But babies don't need as much sleep as they did before. And often for tired parents, they're looking for that consistency and maintenance of total sleep. But sleep needs do consistently drop over time. And that's normal. And eventually, those sleep needs drop enough that one day in the distant future, your baby will not need naps. For now, they do. And for now, sleep needs are still high, but not as high. So why does this feel so hard? Why does this developmental milestone feel like such a train wreck for a lot of parents? Well, for starters, it often happens right when you're just catching your breath. If you're nursing, you've probably got a nice flow with that now, no pun intended, but you've got a routine, you got this figured out. You have a routine for your day. You're getting to know your new role as a parent, how to manage what's happening in your household while you take care of this little one. You may have started to find a little bit of a rhythm. Maybe your baby was giving longer stretches at night. You felt like it was light at the end of the tunnel, and then bam, it's like someone flipped a switch. And the parents will tell me it feels like we're back to the newborn phase, like we thought we were through this. Again, I'm going to just touch on an analogy I use often, and I know I've used it in previous episode, but the spiral analogy. If you picture a slinky just sitting stacked on your desk, and you think about running your finger around the top of it, it will go around and around and around in a circle. And so often when things are feeling good, we feel like we're making progress. But if we're picturing parenting as being this circle that we're tracing with our finger, when things feel like they're falling apart, it feels like we're going backwards right to the beginning of where we started on this circle, and round we go. Instead, I want you to picture picking up the top of that slinky, like just the 1 or 2 first rings, and lifting it up and up and up to make a very long spiral. Now picture running your finger, tracing along that spiral. You're still going around and around in a circle, but every time you go around, you're a little bit higher, a little bit farther up that slinky than you were. And that's what I like to picture with sleep development. We can feel like it's going around in circles, but things are still moving forward. It's hard to see sometimes when it feels like things are sliding back, but you are still going up and up and up towards sleep maturation. And here's where it's important to reframe our expectations around this. Infant sleep is immature by nature. It's meant to be light. It's meant to be easily disrupted. It's meant to be responsive to both internal changes that are happening in your baby's brain and body and external changes, things like hunger, growth spurts, environmental noise, temperature, new skills that they're developing, and even emotional development. And I feel like emotional development is one of those hidden developmental leaps at this age, even in the first year and beyond. We can't see it like we can see eye contact or giggles or rolling. But the emotional development, it's pretty amazing. It's just much harder to see and measure. So your baby's system is growing, and growing is messy, but it's also beautifully adaptive. Like, think about how much your baby has gotten used to being out in the world by this mark. They are moving out of that 4th trimester. So while this season of parenting can be exhausting, it doesn't mean your baby's sleep is broken. It does not mean that you've made a mistake or messed up their sleep. It breaks my heart when I hear parents say, I think I broke my baby's sleep, and feeling like they have done something that has side railed it. It just means your baby is progressing. So let's talk strategies now for getting through this stage of development and supporting your baby through it. Because while we can't stop development, nor would we want to, there are some ways to support your baby through this and to support yourself through this too. So here are a few tools and mindsets that can help. The first, respect the new sleep cycles. Now that your baby's cycling through lighter and deeper sleep, they may need more support linking those sleep cycles together. So it could have been that you didn't need to do anything in particular before, but now at the 30 or 45-minute mark at the end of a sleep cycle, or 1.5 to 2 hour mark, perhaps overnight, where those sleep cycles are longer. Actually, I don't think that they're necessarily longer, but I think we're supported a lot by those hormonal shifts that are starting to show up at night, melatonin being key for that. And so the support that you might need to give feels like the backslide, and it's not. And it doesn't mean you have to fix it. Sometimes it is super valuable to just pause in the moment before rushing in, listen to the sounds, reflect on what it is that you think your baby is communicating. Sometimes they're just very noisy at night. They're still asleep. Other times they might need a feed, a cuddle, change the diaper, change of environment. You can respect the new sleep cycles this way by supporting them that way. The second suggestion I have is to create consistent but flexible routines. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron. How can I be consistent and flexible, Heather? Well, at this age, babies thrive on the predictability. They want to learn about the world, but they want to learn what to expect of the world. And we don't need to be rigid about it. So I always look at having like bookends that kind of structure things, or having benchmarks to our routine or rhythm. But those benchmarks or bookends can be moved. They're not bolted to the shelf. Flexibility is key. So try having a routine or rhythm to your day that includes awake windows where you have certain activities that you can do with them. That includes, I would strongly suggest, some outdoor time, especially this time of year. In a few weeks, we actually have a guest interview that is talking all about sunshine and light and the support it gives for sleep. So be on the lookout for that. A short calming down routine, wind down routine for naps and bedtime. I'm emphasizing short. It does not have to be elaborate, especially for naps. We don't want the routine to be taking longer than the nap. But when it's predictable and enjoyable, I really like when parents make it something that they're looking forward to too, because there's nothing more uncomfortable than trying to get through a bedtime routine when you're not enjoying yourself in the least. You hate the book, or you hate the nursery curtains, or you just are not enjoying the process, or you feel like you have to have certain things in the routine. You don't have to have any particular thing in the routine. You've got to do the basics, and all the rest is nuanced window dressing that you get to pick, figuratively speaking. Although, again, if you don't like those curtains, maybe that's a good little goal to switch it out so you can enjoy the space. You know you're going to be spending lots of time in there, right? So we can also do sensory and motor play when they're awake. Do babies at this age need a lot of sensory and motor play? I'm going to suggest that it depends on the baby. I know if you Google this, you're going to hear a lot about do a lot of sensory play. And what we're trying to actually do is meet the sensory needs of your baby and the motor needs of your baby. Some babies are real sensory seekers. They want to bounce, hug, rock, dance, move. Others just need stillness. Some need to move their bodies a lot on their own. At 4 months, that's going to be a little limited, but it can be something that you keep in mind as you begin to play motorically with them. Bringing up their hands and bringing them together, bringing up their knees and bringing their toes up, all this movement, or even helping them roll from side to side by putting our hands under their hips when they're lying on their back. A lot of this movement and the sensory piece feels really good to a lot of babies. I would say especially things like hugs or feeling contained and rocking and dancing, that rhythmic stuff. So I want you to consider your baby to have their own sensory personality. And your job is to figure out what is it that they do enjoy, what helps them regulate. The third strategy I have is to use habit stacking to add other comfort strategies so that you can support independent sleep gently. And I'm using independent sleep very loosely. I think it is a long, slow, developmental progression to get to independent sleep. But we are seeing differences in sleep at this age that give us an inkling of what independent sleep is going to look like. And if and when you and your baby are ready for something other than what you're already doing, which could be feeding or rocking to sleep, if you're finding that those things are unsustainable or you feel like that is all that you're relying on to get your baby to sleep, introduce other layers to your baby's sleep routine. Add a lullaby, unless your baby is, from an auditory point of view, finding sound or singing to be very alerting. You can try humming and shushing. I have a mom currently, but she's not the first one, who has used that yoga or meditative sound, which has a real resonance that is calming. It's really supportive of the vagus nerve for yourself. And because of co-regulation, your baby is also going to have that support when you make that kind of frequency. In terms of movement and touch, patting, bouncing, rocking, all of these things can be things that can be habit stacked around what you're already doing to support your baby's sleep. All of these things, all the sensory and movement habits that we can stack can be both calming and be part of the routine so that the comfort strategies that aren't sustainable that you're using now can be gradually faded out. And so we are looking for both calming and part of the routine. It can be calming immediately because your baby just feels very reassured and secure with whatever habit you're stacking on. But once it becomes predictable, part of the routine, then you're adding another component of the calm. It's very comforting to know what's going to happen and to be able to expect what's going to happen. And when it is part of that routine for a while, the thing that you're doing that isn't sustainable. And I'll bring up the example of parents, more than one family, who have done vigorous bouncing on a yoga ball to get their baby to sleep. And it's just so much where initially is what works. And the parents are like, we're in for this. We can do this. And then the weeks and months go by and this vigorous bouncing on a yoga ball is taxing. It's labor intensive. It's exhausting. And if we can layer on some other pieces, we can gradually fade out that one piece, whether it's bouncing on a yoga ball and feeling like you're bouncing so hard you're going to hit your head on the ceiling, or if it's something else, we can gradually move it out when there's other things in its place. The last strategy I want to mention is to prioritize your own rest. Now, this is a big one. Take a nap. Ask for help. Go to bed early when you can. Protect your own sleep. It's just as important as your baby's. And in fact, it is supportive of your baby's sleep. Now, I know some of you out there are not nappers. You can't nap. You won't nap. It doesn't feel good to you. Don't do it if it doesn't feel good or support you. But certainly find those moments in the day where you can rest. And I know there are a lot of you who can't even rest, that it's really hard to rest, to sit down on the couch without a thing to do. And instead you jump up and you're washing dishes or scrubbing the floor or folding laundry. Find a way to give your body a pause. And if you can't do nothing, like if you can't just sit or lie on the couch and close your eyes or just stare without having something to listen to or trying to get something done, consider filling it with something that does keep you busy, like having an active meditation or something relaxing like music to listen to while you pause and deliberately just do that one thing. So my final thoughts on this are summed up in you're not doing it wrong if things are going sideways at this age. If you take nothing else from this episode, let it be this. Your baby waking up more often right now does not mean you failed. It does not mean you have broken their sleep. It means your baby is developing. There's no quote unquote getting through the 4-month regression and returning to what it was like before. There's only moving forward. And I feel like that is a really important perspective to highlight, because so often we just want to get back to what it was. We thought it was hard before, but now that it's harder, can we just go back in time? But development doesn't work that way. And in the end, we can be glad that development doesn't work that way. There are so many amazing skills and milestones that your baby will be displaying over the next year and beyond and beyond. And when we know that moving forward is something that we can do with a bit of knowledge and perspective and having grace with the process, maybe it's your baby that's protesting sleep, but we're going to have grace with the process and the tools and strategies that fit for your family and your baby. Now, sometimes it's helpful to reframe that language and stop calling it a regression altogether. And so maybe one of these phrases are a better fit. What if we called it the 4-month reorganization? All that neural connection stuff, just total reorganizing, or the 4-month wake-up call, or just a total normal part of baby sleep. You're not doing it wrong. This is normal, and this is growth. Thanks for tuning in to the Baby Sleep Connection podcast. If this episode helped reframe the 4-month shift for you, I'd love for you to share it with another tired parent who needs to hear it. And if you'd like more, come to familysleep.ca to explore not just the podcast, which would be at /podcast, but also some other valuable resources and supports for you, particularly if you're interested in working with me more. There are 2 resources I'm going to include in the show notes that I want you to take advantage of. The first is a free self-care resource. This is one that gives you some real concrete ideas on how to fold in self-care into your day. This is a long game, right? We need to take care of ourselves to get through the intense phase, not just of the 4-month age and stage, but well beyond that as well. I also have a June sale on my Baby Sleep mini course. This is a self-led course that covers sleep from newborn up to toddlers, and it's 50% off this month with the code Junebug, because I think it sounds really cute. It is June now. I haven't seen any June bugs yet. I don't find June bugs particularly cute, but there's something very cute about the phrase June bug. So I'm going with that. You can find the link in the show notes, but you can also go to familysleep.ca/baby sleep course. It is right up at the top banner of my website, so you can check it out there. And as always, if you have questions, reach out. You can email me at heather@heatherboyd.ca. Until next time, may you have a restful night. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I do hope that you found the information and perspectives in this podcast episode helpful to you as you navigate your baby's sleep development. Of course, this podcast provides general information, and it isn't tailored to your family's reality or the specific needs of your baby. If you're concerned about your baby's sleep or health, be sure to reach out to your healthcare provider. If you're feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and you need a place to feel nurtured and reassured, you can find me on Instagram at familysleep.ca. Until next episode, look for the connections that support you and your baby.